Speaking of pins, I need to go get mine from the other room. Hey all, it's Alirien, and today we are starting on Sybil's bodice, which will be almost the final piece. So we actually have two types of sleeves we were also making on top of this, but the bodice is the final big main body piece for Sybil's ensemble. I've already pieced together and cut out the PDF pattern. Somebody stole my chair before I could come get started, so I figured I would leave her here and just start with her front and center. We're gonna work on cutting out and tracing off the patterns for the pieces that follow the overskirt. So the partlet, the bodice, the sleeves, etc. Someone was trying to climb on the nice fabric, and it's the one fabric I will not let her get on top of, because you play Velcro on everything. So now we get to a really fun part, which is piecing together a PDF pattern. Yay! I have a wealth of Scotch tape. So PDF patterns are fun in that you have to take all these single-side printed pieces of paper and lay them out and match up the markings, tape them all together, and then cut the pieces apart. And usually the pieces are not cut edge to edge, or not printed edge to edge, I should say. So there's overlap, which makes it more convoluted. And it seems that this one also decided to print half a page in a couple of these pieces. So I have to cut this one in half and put the other half here, which is fun. We're gonna fold along this gray line here. I've got one roll of double-sided tape. I have 4 rolls of gift wrapping, like extra clear, not that it matters what kind of tape you use. And we're gonna stick all this together. And this is probably what we're gonna be doing for the rest of the stream here, is piecing together this bodice pattern. Ma'am, where are you trying to go? No. Don't fuss at me. Do not talk back to your mother. Yeah, you heard me. Give me a look like, excuse me, bitch? I will say the grid for lining this one up is much better than it was on the skirt pattern. The skirt pattern had information that just didn't print, and all I had to really go off of for matching pieces together were these diamond markings that formed in the corners. This one has a whole faded gray grid where you can actually properly line up the entire edge of the pattern piece, so that's nice. Based on the measurements in the binder and that we've taken of Sybil, I'm going to run with the size 14 for the mock-up. It's going to be easier to take in than to let out, as always. I'm going to lay out the pattern and get the muslin cut, and we're going to be working on the mock-up at Maker Faire tomorrow. So all I'm doing tonight is cutting out the mock-up pieces out of muslin, and then I am going to go get the partlet taken care of later this evening. I'm going to get as far as I can in the partlet tonight, and if I'm not quite done tonight, I'll just finish up what's left of it tomorrow and then get the bodice mock-up done. Now, with several delays for various reasons, we are finally piecing together the muslin, and we will do a fitting today as soon as this is done to then figure out if we need to adjust sizing at all to move on to the final product. If all goes well, I should have this and at least the inner set of sleeves done before Texas Run Fest, because we are planning to go out there for their final weekend of their 50th anniversary, which is Celtic Christmas, and that is the weekend right after Thanksgiving. So I and my boyfriend and a friend of ours, Jinxie, who streams on Twitch, by the way, so if you would like to help me support a very good friend of mine, please go check out Nanobite VT on Twitch. They're amazing, they're fantastic. Yes, the 3 of us plus Sybil will be going out, and this will be Sybil's first experience of a Renaissance festival in modern day, so it'll be interesting to see her experience comparing a modern day Renaissance festival to
her actual Renaissance era, and it'll also be interesting to see what people think of her garb wearing it out and about at a Renfest. But yes, we have all the pieces. I think I have decided, it was a lot of hemming and hawing back and forth with myself to decide which style, and discussing with Sybil of course, to decide which style of the bodice we're going to do. And I have ultimately decided that I want to go with the front lacing version of the bodice, which will be ladder laced with some very attractive silver cord of some kind, and we are going to skirt the bottom to help create a bit more seamlessness and help the bodice hide a bit more of the waistbands of the skirts and such, and help to smooth out any bulk at the waist. But I am foregoing any sort of attachment at the shoulder because I'm going to be attaching one of the 2 pairs of sleeves indefinitely to the bodice. I am going to be adding points for the inner sleeve to be tied to it, or snapped, or hooked, or what have you. This, like the pair of bodies, is going to be a low square neckline, but it's going to be a smaller square neckline than the para bodies, because the point of this is to be further in to hide all of what's left of the para bodies that is visible, as well as to hide the bottom and side edges of the partlet. This will have a bit more coverage than the previous garments have had. I've also gone with the center front opening closing section because that is actually the most common that we see in any portraiture and extant garments from the period. It was very uncommon actually for the bodices to lace in the back, at least the outermost bodice. This is going to be made out of that same gorgeous blue material from the skirt, so that will be exciting. But of course, like I said, we gotta make the muslin mock-up. So I'll go over this. So we're doing view A, which opens in the front. I am probably going to have to thread bind the grommets on this, so that is one thing that will take a little bit, just because, you know, metal grommets and eyelets don't exist in the Renaissance. So I will set metal grommets because that's easier, and then I will take probably either a metallic or an embroidery quality blue thread that's as close to that material as possible in color, or black, and will coat the eyelets with such in order to blend them in a bit better and have them not be the stark metal grommet in the middle of the bodice. I need to find my eyelet strips for testing the fit. The first thing to do is to attach the stiffening, the 2 cuts of interfacing here. I think technically I needed 4, but you attach the interfacing to the front piece. Add any boning, which I'm not boning this. That was the point of the pair of bodies, was for that to be boned. Add any embellishments, which we're skipping until the final version. And I will probably leave embellishment for after the bodice is finished anyway. We have to cinch part of the armscye. You spelled armscye weird. I'm used to seeing it A-R-M-S-C-Y-E. She has spelled it literally arm's eye. I really don't. So she's got all the fitting instructions and then the construction steps, and writes the construction steps as though you've already done the fitting, even though you need the construction steps in order to make a mock-up to then fit. It's weird. Anyway, so interfacing on the fronts, then sew up the center back. I'm not worrying about any easing. Side seams, shoulder seams, and I will leave the front, I will leave the front connection of the strap undone so that I can figure out where it needs to attach on the final during fitting. So it's pretty straightforward. Let's see, the skirting. The skirting can be done one of 2 ways. You can either, first you can choose whether you want pointed or rounded corners. I think I'm gonna keep them pointed. For the normal skirting, you would attach all the pieces together, or you can leave the pieces split and then attach to the base of the bodice in whichever form you prefer. I'm probably not binding either. Maybe I should though, because the only thing is the edge binding won't have the same finish as that fabric unless I cut enough to make a like binding. I could add beading and trim to the binding though. So that seems pretty straightforward as far as putting it together. Make eyelets having the space no more than 1 inch apart. Far too much explanation. Let us begin. I don't feel like getting out my iron and my ironing board, so we're just gonna stitch the stiffening on with a basting stitch and go from there. We're being a little bit lazy, but it's okay. So Side note, if you put together a pattern with double stick tape, be wary of any spots where the double stick tape is exposed and where other pattern pieces will get stuck to it. Oh dear, I almost pricked myself on that pin. I realized just now that when I was setting up everything for Maker Faire, I completely forgot that I have these needle minders, and that would have made a big difference. I kept dropping my needle on the floor and not knowing where it was at Maker Faire. I really hope that this size will work in its current form as much as possible, because the less adjusting I have to do, the better. This goes, yeah, that goes that way. The stiffening piece is smaller than the section it needs to go in, so I want to make sure I'm lining it up, excuse me, properly. Having center front edge 5/8 from flat line edge. Okay, that's what I needed to know. So, I have a pencil, I have a big scarf ruler. Turn the ruler the correct direction so I can see what the heck I'm doing. And there's one basted on. Okay, so now we have both of these basted on. See that there? So now we are going to sew up the center back seam, and luckily since these were already pinned together flat, all I'm going to do is put it on the presser foot and stitch up at a 5/8 inch seam allowance, and I've already put my stitching length back down to where it normally sits for its typical seam. Next, I believe, is the shoulder seams, or the side seam. Side seam. We're going to leave the seams to the outside for this. I have pinned the straps to the back bodice at the shoulder, and I'm going to stitch both of those on. We are not going to attach them at the front, though. And there we have the straps on. So now we're going to do the skirting. Uh-oh. Someone's in your spot, Roxanne. Chica, don't start grumbling. And there's a bodice skirt. I'm going to center the center back seam. This is all pinned one end to the other to the bottom of the bodice, so now we stitch it very carefully. Just in time for the sun to start blinding me, I have gotten the skirt stitched on, so now I'm going to find my eyelet fitting strips, wherever they may be, and baste those on, and we'll get Sybil in to do a test fit and see what, if anything, needs to be adjusted. Presumably things taken in rather than let out, and where these straps need to attach in the front, and at what angle. From there, if I need to make another mock-up, I will. Hopefully we can go right to cutting the real bodice. After doing the fitting, just about everything should work with the size 14. The only thing was the straps were too short. So on the outer side of the strap, it was not meeting. There was at least an inch gap. So I'm going to cut the straps with 3 extra inches, just to be absolutely sure that it is long enough. And as with the pair of bodies, that will be the absolute last seam that I complete. I may even hand sew it this time to really make sure that it's pretty, since this is the outermost garment. I have all of the pieces for the bodice that will be cut out of our beautiful, amazing blue material laid out. I'm going to pin them in place. The back and the back of the skirt I'm going to cut on the fold this time. I didn't do it with the muslin because the scrap of muslin I was working with wasn't quite large enough to account for that, but it was a mock-up. I was fine doing an extra seam or two for the sake of getting the fit. But in this case, I don't want to have that center seam. I'd rather have the material be continuous. I'm not worrying about pattern matching, I'm worrying about conserving material here. If need be, I may develop a tiny equivalent of a stomacher that will fit into the bodice behind that gap in order to hide any of the base of the partlet or the pair of bodies or the waistbands that shows through. I don't think we'll have that issue because we didn't really have that issue with the mock-up. It occurs to me I probably should have gotten a blue lining for the underside of the skirting. I will either work with a dark blue cotton that I know I already have somewhere, or I will cut the underside for the skirting pieces out of this same material, because I don't think that will affect I have so much of this material left. I bought essentially what was left at Mood when it was still listed on the website. So I should have access even after doing the hanging sleeves that will attach to the bodice and the underside of her hat brim. So I think we'll be okay there. We'll see. We'll see what happens there. Well, it might be better to just go ahead and use the gray lining because there's going to be a silver lining inside the hanging sleeves that kind of seems out of nowhere compared with everywhere else that's a smaller silvery detail. So maybe it'll be okay. Maybe I'll even take some of that satin lining for the underneath of the skirting. That might be the better way to go. What I'll do is I'll lay it out and make sure I have enough of that satin to fit the hanging sleeves and work with what's left. That's what I'll do. I'm gonna pin these in place and get them cut. Pick up the blue, we'll lay out the lining for everything except the skirting, and then I'll lay out the buckram and cut out the stiffening pieces. We will go from there. Hopefully get some sewing done. If I don't get any sewing done today, I'll do the bulk of it tomorrow. I think as far as Sybil being able to wear this for Texas, we may not have the grommets covered in thread. I may not have all of the points on the arm side for connecting the inner sleeve. We will see. So yeah, let's get this pinned and cut. I'm so nervous! Yeah. Are you gonna need to get to look at? You sensed I was on the floor with fabric, so you have to come get in the middle of everything. Ah yes, the box is on the fabric. Much more acceptable. You're such an ass, So we are finally doing this. I went and restocked on blue and black thread, and I have wound my bobbin. So now we're gonna do this. I have 4 pieces of bodice stiffening. I'm going to stitch 1 to each bodice piece, the 2 fashion fabric fronts and the 2 lining backs, just to really make sure that front is gonna be nice and smooth. I need to go grab my pins in a moment, but that is where we're starting, is stitching the stiffening on. And then we're just gonna follow the instructions, just like we did the first time, of sewing up all of the seams for the fashion fabric, and then for the lining, we will attach everything together and flatline the whole thing, and we will edge bind as much as we can. I'm wondering if I should put some boning in the front on either side of where the eyelets will be, just to prevent any tugging. The buckram should do most of that work. Should have some boning somewhere. I have cording too, but I'm nervous about how much of the material that might take. Let's see here. So I got the spiral steel and I have cording. The spiral steel is flatter, so that would probably be the better option. I'm gonna work 2 boning channels on each side of the bodice and put a length of the spiral steel in each one, just to make sure that either side of where the eyelets will be sturdy enough to put up with being laced tight. It shouldn't need to be pulled quite as tight as the pair of bodies, because it just needs to be flush. I have this twisty silver cord that we are going to use as lacing, and I have some blue satin blanket binding that we're going to use as the edge binding, because I think that will look better along with the shiny material. Yeah, we're just gonna work through all these steps exactly the same way we did with the mock-up, except being much more careful to be clean with all of the stitches. And yeah, this won't actually be finished till tomorrow, because I need to go through my eyelets and make sure I have enough of them. Tomorrow or Wednesday, I should hopefully have the hoop to replace the reed and the farthingale. We'll see how quickly the 1-day shipping can actually work here. Yeah, let's stop yapping and attach some buckram to some bodice fronts. some twill tape, stitch down inside, stitch the bottom, stitch up the other side, put the spiral steel in, pulled it back out, marked where I needed to cut it, shoved it back in, and has stitched the top. I only have enough to do a length on the inside on either of the two fronts, just to put the eyelets on the other side of, to make sure that this front edge is going to be nice and sturdy against the pulling. I may open this back up to put more boning on the other side when I can get more boning, but for now we're going to go with the single bone. So now I'm just going to do the other side. I have the twill tape stitched in already. I'm going to stitch the bottom up the other side and just repeat the same process.
A sleepless vigil above the door. They also announced that
Doing the side seam between the front and back pattern pieces. Now we are going to attach the straps to the backs. And I've already done this on the inside, but I'm going to stitch these seam allowances down as well, and then do this with the lining. And we have a bodice shell just about done. I gotta stitch down the other seam allowance, but that's all the pieces of the main bodice together. So I'll stitch down the other seam allowance, attach the straps, and stitch down seam allowances for the lining, and then we lay one on the other and flatline it all together. Let's try that again. I apparently wasn't recording the first time. Now that the shoulder seams are done, that means all of our main seams are done, so we're gonna take the outer fabric and lay it flat on the lining and stitch it all together all the way around. One quick thing I wanted to mention about this pattern that I noticed while cutting out the fabric, but apparently have not said to the camera yet. In another strange sort of choice, whenever you notch pattern pieces, typically the notches for back pieces that meet together will be doubled and the front pieces will be single. Sometimes you will also see a triple notch in cases where you have, say, front seams, side seams, and back seams. Often a triple notch is just to help you make sure that your two center backs are going together or what have you. But for some reason in this pattern, Miss Anderson chose to put a double notch for the front strap meeting the front bodice and a single notch for the back strap meeting the back bodice. I don't know why, but here we are. Along with that, her instructions are not super duper clear on whether you are intended to flatline or if that's an optional thing. She has suggested fabrics for a flat lining, like a middle layer, and talks about the flat lining as an integral part, but then never, like, you don't hear about a regular lining until here where it says optional lining. I guess technically I was supposed to take a thicker fabric to make this bodice sturdier and put it in the middle and then line it, more like a traditional corset. I'm opting not to do that. If I find that this just doesn't have enough body, again, I will open it up and add a stiffer, possibly a heavyweight interfacing into it, and then stitch it all back shut, which will be a lot of work, but worth it in the end to fix it. But we're just gonna go with the two soft fabrics and see how this does. Future Allie had a brief talk with current Allie, and it's better to avoid any extra work later, right? So I did go ahead and find my heavyweight interfacing and cut out the pattern pieces in that. I'm gonna get it stitched down to the lining very, very quickly, and then we will stitch the lining layer to the outer fabric. Actually, I might stitch it to the blue. Since this has the boning, it might be better to stitch this to the blue section. And I'll get it trimmed down, and then we will continue.
Off-ramp at exit 6 en route. That is the cutest thing I have ever.
That took very long to pin this. I wanted to be absolutely sure it was not going to move. So I'm going to start at one end and go all the way around. And this will be the last thing I do tonight because it is currently just shy of 2 a.m. So I will finish this up and I will put Bamble to bed and shower and go to bed and finish the rest tomorrow. currently sit. This is not stitched at the shoulders. I merely have it clipped. I have it clipped at the top and the bottom. It looks so good. Oh, I'm so happy. So next we are going to prep the skirting pieces. I am going to do it all as one long strip instead of as separate pieces. So I am going to run the seams to connect all the blue pieces together and then all the silver pieces together, put them right sides together, stitch all the way around at the 5/8, clip the corners on the inside and flip it right side out, and I will baste that top edge shut, and then we will attach it at the bottom edge. I did end up having more than enough of the satin lining that will go inside the hanging sleeves and in the furthest inside of the hat to make the underside of this. So we've got blue, and so there's the satin and there's the blue. That's the back, so I actually need the other side. But you can see there what that will look like. Yes, we are going to run some seams and make a bodice skirt. Several hours later, because we left to go get snacks and supplies for this weekend. But I have the lining layer all stitched together, and here is the outer layer all stitched together. So now we're going to line this up right sides together, so shiny to shiny basically, and we're going to stitch this all the way around front edges and all the way along the outer curve. Clip the corners, the points here, and then we will flip it and stitch it to, I will probably need to hook up the ironing board to give this a press, just to make sure that that folded seam allowance is nice and crisp, and then we will stitch it along the bottom of the bodice. There we have the skirt all in one piece. I caught one seam allowance going the wrong way, but it's on the what will be the inside, so I'm not too terribly worried about it. We cut our thread tails from where we started. I'm going to use the pinking shears to cut the corners. I'm leaving about 1/4 to 1/8 of an inch of space between the edge that I'm creating and the actual stitching, just so it's not too terribly close. I'm not sure off the top of my head where my point turner is, so I'm going to carefully use this little bitty screwdriver as my point turner. Perhaps I can get away with something a little narrower. I just don't want to poke a hole through any of the fabric, because I have done that before and felt like an imbecile when I did it. There we go. That's probably about as crisp as I can get it. You can see that's where we started. And there's our nice crisp point. And then the rest of this is simple enough once you've got that. I was very, very careful to line up the seam allowances as best as possible. I will take some pins, pin this to just kind of train it to be flat. It's 2 a.m. and I am tired, but I have the skirt pinned onto the bodice, ready to be stitched in the morning. I will get that stitched and get the outer edge of the skirting piece pressed in the morning, but I am very tired. We had a long day. So I'm gonna go to bed. I am foregoing my stream tomorrow. I was supposed to have my November subathon. Well, I was initially supposed to have it on Sunday, but then we were at Renfest. So I was supposed to have it today, because it's 2 a.m. so it's totally Wednesday now. And I am foregoing it for the sake of getting this done and hopefully knocking out the inner sleeves as well. I apologize if the ending of this, if this process of the final bodice and if the video for the inner sleeves seems rushed and a little piecemeal, but it's because I'm doing too many things at once, as usual. This is where we're stopping tonight, and I will pick this up in the morning as soon as I get home. Good afternoon. Once again, I have a problem with Miss Anderson in the order of operations in this pattern. The skirting instructions are given before the binding instructions, and it is unclear if binding is supposed to go on the skirting or not. It seems like the edge binding is only being shown and discussed in reference to a version of the bodice that doesn't have the skirting on it. So I don't know, and it's never talked about bag lining the bodice. I'm not sure where these concepts meet and don't. I'm not going to put the edge binding on the skirting. I think it's unnecessary and just adds more steps that don't need to be done. But because I flatlined this instead of bag lining it, I need the binding in the arm size and around the neckline and on the front edge to contain everything and finish it off. I think what I am going to do is put the binding along the front edge here on both sides, up to the strap, and cut several inches of excess. We will do the same thing around the back neckline and on the two arm sides. When I get to the point down at the bottom here, which has just immediately come unpinned, but it's fine. It's pinned to the form, not to anything else important. I think I am going to have an extra inch or so turn past the corner onto this seam allowance, which will be trimmed and dealt with once I stitch the skirting on. That way there's no abrupt, strange ending. Actually, I can probably just end it at the very base here because, again, the skirting's gonna hide it. Yeah, I think that's what I can do. We're gonna bind this before we attach the skirting, so I get to unpin the skirting, at least at this front section. I probably shouldn't have bothered pinning it on at all last night and just waited until today. Yeah, we're gonna do the binding first and get that squared away, and then we will attach the skirting. And then we are going to do our eyelets before test fitting this and pinning the straps in place. The straps I am probably going to machine stitch the actual seam and then hand sew everything else in place. So the very last thing will be the strap seam. Though I am thinking I will get everything done except for the strap and then set it aside to move on to the sleeve so that I can also get that done and hopefully have time to fix the farthingales issues this evening, because a shipping update came through today and my hoop wire that I emergency ordered is actually out for delivery. Fingers crossed it does in fact get here today in a reasonable time. The current estimate is between 3 and 5 p.m. Let's unpin and unclip this and we'll get some binding on this and go from there. I'm sorry I seem so out of it. I am very tired and I am very stressed, but I can't stop now. Shears and folded over the binding to the other side and pinned it. I have done the best I can to miter the corners where there's a corner on the bodice. It's not perfect, but it's as good as I can probably get it. So now we're going to stitch in the ditch from the front to catch the back of the binding, and then I will go with the pinking shears again on the back to trim off the excess. Ma'am, you were in exactly the wrong spot. I forgot to film it because the camera had to charge and I was just desperate to get things done, but the binding is done and on. I will show it better in a moment. And the skirting is on. And I have gone through and marked the placement for the eyelets on the inside, since the lining will mark, not the outside fabric. I am now going to take the hole puncher here and my trusty dusty mallet, and I'm going to punch the holes. And once I punch all the holes, I will go back through with the mallet and the eyelet setter and 18 eyelets, and I will set those in place. And I'm going to have to move a cat because she's in a mood where she is probably going to try to attack me every 5 seconds when I get too close. To explain the process for anybody who's never done this before, eyelets and custom garments are comprised of usually 2 pieces, in this case 3. There's an extra plastic washer to add to the stability of this, but there's, I'll put, pictures here, but there is what's called the male end and the female end, or the eyelet and the anvil, or the washer. The actual eyelet part, the big piece, goes in the front, and you stick the extension through the eyelet from the front, so it's sticking out into the back here. And then I'm going to take the plastic washer and put that over there on the back, and then I'm going to take the actual washer, the metal washer, the female piece. One side of it is grooved and one side of it is curved. I'm putting the groove down toward the fabric every single time, because I couldn't quite find a consistent description of how it's supposed to work when you have a washer like this, but it seemed the groove was supposed to go down and the curve up, so that is what I've gone with. And then I'm setting the peg for the setter inside, and then one good tap does most of the work, but I'm tapping it a few more times to make sure it's really secure. And we've got 5 of our 9 eyelets on this side already done.
Here is the mostly finished bodice. We have all the eyelets in. Here's the cord. I've already knotted the end and stuck it through one eyelet so that it's ready to go. I'm not going to cut the length yet. I want to lace it all the way up and figure out how much lacing is used, and then double that and then cut that end. And I want to see if one of the metal workers at one of the festivals has aglets that I can add to this to put onto the end so that I know, so that it'll be easier to lace and a bit sturdier. The only thing left to do besides measuring this and cutting it, I need to actually go through and cover the eyelets with thread. I will do that over time as I'm able, but we also need to actually finish the front straps, but I need to wait until Sybil can lace up and everything to figure out where the straps need to connect for her. But this is about as done as it can be for now. It will probably be done either tomorrow night or over the weekend. But yeah, this is just about the last thing. I'll hopefully throw in some footage of me stitching the straps down. But the next thing outside of that you will see is Sybil wearing it and showing it off so that you can see the almost done ensemble. There is also, I need to actually put the point loops for tying the inner sleeve to this, but I need to do the inner sleeve before I put those points on, just so I can make sure I have enough to actually get that done. So, and I need this strap to be done before I can figure out where the points go. So we are going to move on to the inner sleeve. I'm going to sit and get the pattern all taped together and hopefully knock that out very quickly. But yeah, bodice is just about done. Editing Allie here, and yeah, the bodice is done. Sybil says she's very, very pleased with it. She said it was very comfortable walking around both Texas and Louisiana Renaissance festivals, which the reveal footage you're seeing is from Texas, from when we got back to camp. We do have some tweaks that need to be made, and these will probably be made by using darts, which is a more modern technique, but from the outside it shouldn't be super noticeable. Effectively, what we realized after the final bodice was made, and this is something that happens, but the front straps were set far too wide and should have been brought in. We're going to have to tweak this on the final garment now that it's already made, and that's perfectly fine. We will do the best we can with it. We may also need to take a dart in the center back at the neckline as well, because it seems that neckline might also be a little too wide. If this means we have to take the straps apart again and refit them again, so be it, but I've already done it once. If I have to do it again, I'll do it again. Otherwise, she loves it, and she actually told me that she got a compliment from our Louisiana Renfest queen on the fit of the bodice, which she was absolutely chuffed to hear. And someone at Texas Renfest called her a Borgia, which is a little bit off, but appearance-wise, she was flattered, but she's very pleased with it. You can also catch a glimpse of the next garment to come in vlog style. All things considered, the amount of time it took, the amount of stress I gave myself, let's be real here, in trying to get it done,
the confusions and difficulties with the way the pattern was designed and written, and the stress of not wanting to waste such gorgeous fabric, because it is really gorgeous fabric. In spite of all of that, it came out splendidly. And I've learned a lot about how this thing needs to go together, and if I visit this sort of thing again, I know what to do and what not to do. But we move on. Now that the bodice is done, we have 2 pairs of sleeves to build, and that will be the next vlog you see, is Sybil's inner sleeves before we do the Texas Ren Fest event attendance vlog. I hope you will stay tuned for both of those. Thank you all so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, you know where the buttons and the links are, I suppose. But since it's the end of the year, we're coming up to the new year, I'll go ahead and, as I did in the tarot video, give my annual sort of reminder. And if you enjoyed the video, you should click like, it's that little thumbs up button. And if you haven't done so already, you should subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Leave me a comment down below, let me know what you think of the finished bodice or the whole Sybil garb project so far, and if I haven't made your favorite piece yet, what piece are you most excited to see next? And if you know anyone else who loves Ren fairs, costumes, history, anything that pertains to this video, go ahead and click that share button and send it to them, see what they think. If you'd like to see more content like this video specifically, I have my costume playlist linked in the cards and in the description, where you can also find my Linktree portal if you'd like to keep up with my adventures across all the other social media planes. I would like, as always, to give a special thanks to my coven of patrons who continue to be my biggest supporters, and if you, dear viewer, would like to join their ranks, again, check that Linktree portal for my Patreon, which begins at $1 per month. Thanks so much again. Stay tuned, as mentioned, for Sybil's inner sleeves and our Texas Ren Fair vlog, or possibly vlogs. It might be 3 of them. And I will see you all again very, very soon. Keep aiming, my loves. Mwah. And as Sybil says, anon, friends.